Today we follow the journey of Paul D'Amico, the CEO of one of the most popular pizza restaurants on the East Coast, as he steps out of his comfort zone and goes undercover. Paul is about to face the ultimate test of his leadership skills as he immerses himself in the hectic and fast-paced world of his employees. He will experience firsthand the heat, sweat, and tears that go into making the perfect pizza. But what will happen when Paul is confronted with the dirty, gritty realities of the job? Will he rise to the occasion like a true boss, or will he crumble under pressure? Stay with us to find out on this episode of Undercover Boss. Paul's main objectives are to expand to the West Coast and attract new customers, especially the younger generation. And he realizes the need and importance of getting an inside scoop inside the company before shaking things up. Paul goes undercover as JJ, and his employees are going to be told that he's on a show about starting over in a new career, and they're going to have no idea that it's actually Undercover Boss. Paul's restaurant during COVID was not really getting a lot of customers inside the restaurant, and deliveries made up for most of their revenue. And his first employee today is Steve, the general manager at one of his chains, who's going to show him the ropes of making and delivering the perfect pizza. But as Paul gets assigned to the cut and wraps position, he finds it quite difficult to find the coordination and speed that it takes, as most of his pizza inside the oven turned to a crisp. After a few disastrous hours inside the kitchen, Paul goes out to make deliveries. He was told to be kind and engage his customers in a little conversation, but Paul failed to do so, and Steve let him know that he did not earn his tip. Even the second time around, Paul faces difficulty when confronted with his second customer. And after a very stressful and demanding day, things start to get intense and emotional as Steve opens up to Paul about his previous life. Before, when they were in the car, Steve has told Paul just how useless the employees feel, as the corporate culture inside Round Table Pizza has begun to alienate most of the employees. And now, Steve opens up to Paul and tells him how he used to abuse drugs as a kid and how he turned his life around by Round Table Pizza, as it was the first job that he got that saved his life and stopped him from ending up on the streets forever. This was an incredibly touching moment for Paul, as he realizes that some employees like Steve deserve all the appreciation and care that they can get. Next, Paul heads over to one of the least successful branches of his restaurant to see just what's really holding them back. When he gets there, he meets Patrick, the restaurant manager, and the place already looks a little old, as it's one of the oldest branches of the restaurant. Patrick tries to show Paul around inside the kitchen, but things come to a grinding halt, as most of the equipment doesn't really work. Paul also notices just how understaffed this branch is, as Patrick, even though he's the general manager, is the one that vacuums and cleans everything because everybody was laid off due to the pandemic. As the two get close, Patrick opens up to Paul about the cutbacks that were made because of the pandemic and how he was unable to see his father after his chemotherapy because his work is so demanding and there aren't a lot of breaks. Feeling like a lot of changes need to be made to that branch, Paul heads over to his next employee. Paul flies to Texas to one of their newest branches there and meets Anthony, the restaurant manager there, and Anthony shows him how to make the classic Round Table Pizza. As the day went by and Paul got to see Anthony in action, he saw just how dedicated and committed he is to his job, as Anthony went around with Paul in the neighborhood giving out coupons and advertising their brand, so the restaurant gets more visits from potential customers. As Paul takes his break with Anthony, he learns how he was about to make it big in the NFL, but things didn't really go well for him, and he ended up on the streets peddling drugs and even did time in jail. And he turned things around with his job at Round Table Pizza, and he even has a little league where he coaches little kids before they hit middle school and teaches them how to play football. After spending his day with Anthony, Paul heads over to Laudalina, one of his longest standing employees, and her branch is one of the most successful that Round Table has. Laudalina shows Paul how to make side dishes, and as they converse, he also learns that she takes money out of her own pockets to give to employees, as most of the employees don't really make much in an hour, and corporate doesn't really give out any coupons or gifts, and she has to do that on her own. But this wasn't the most distressing thing that Paul had to hear or do that day, cause as a newbie inside the restaurant, he had to clean the grease trap. And boy oh boy was this grease trap so repulsive that it almost made Paul throw up all over the kitchen. But Paul's day with Lotalina ends on a positive note as she invites him to her house to meet her grandkids and have some snacks. It is here that Paul learns that Lotalina is from Portugal, but even though she wants to go visit with her grandkids, she can't as she doesn't even have a retirement fund, and she has to save all the money that she has for when she can't work anymore. After his last undercover job with Lotalina, Paul must now reveal himself to all his employees and make some changes inside his company that's gonna benefit him and his employees in the process. He first starts out with Steve and invites him to join a corporate meeting so that his thoughts and ideas get heard, and additionally offers him $30,000 so he can start a college fund for both his kids. Next he meets Anthony and offers him $10,000 for his little league and also gives him $25,000 so he can modify his home and accommodate his special needs son. Next he meets up with Patrick and offers him $10,000 for keeping the restaurant afloat, which Patrick wants to share with the rest of his employees. But then Paul goes on to offer him an additional $10,000 so Patrick can spend it on himself, and then Paul goes on to give him $15,000 so that Patrick can go on a trip with his father and reconnect as he hadn't really had much time with him. And last but not least, Paul meets up with Lotalina. He gives her $5,000 as gift cards, $15,000 so she and her grandkids can visit Portugal, and an additional $25,000 so she can start a retirement fund. And that is how today's episode wraps up.